Lovely. Thank you very much. I've got the clicker here. Lovely. So, yeah, I'm Sarah Greenham. I work in the Department of Geography at the University of Birmingham. Very different subject matter for this presentation, talking about healthy communities as us living in the city. So I'll be introducing the climate risk and vulnerability assessment work that we have been developing in partnership with Birmingham City Council and the West Midlands Combined Authority, with colleagues from the Department of Geography and in BIFoR, and also in civil engineering. So we begin in Birmingham, which is great, where we are right now. I've presented this a few times to some other places that may have not visited Birmingham before, so I like to start with a presentation slide on how great Birmingham is, and I'm not biased because I am from London, but I also love Birmingham. So yeah, talking about this is a great city, a lot going on, a lot of change has happened, and this is where we start to develop about we need to consider climate risk and the impacts of that on the city. So Birmingham as a city itself, I think it was been mentioned before by Simon Needle. He was also involved in some of this work. Birmingham as a city is very young in terms of average age, and it's very ethnically diverse. The city, with its post-war recovery, has been rapidly redeveloping, so we're deindustrializing. You'll see lots of new flats and buildings going up, and the reputation of the city is changing and improving. So there's a lot of work going on right now at Birmingham City Council to sort of give it a new look, a new feel. There's lots of different areas in its big city plan. One of them is really important, is the city that is considered a city of nature. Historically, Birmingham and its trade background is a city of 1,000 trades, and the aspiration for Birmingham City Council is it would love to be the future city of 1,000 green spaces. And I think this brings in a little bit as to why we're talking about climate risk, vulnerability, and the built environment, why I'm presenting at BIFoR presentations here. This is where it's getting at, is how can we help develop a city of 1,000 green spaces that also addresses climate risk and vulnerability. So there's been lots of different work that's gone on in Birmingham. So you'll see some different maps from different research. The work that we've been doing as part of the West Midlands Air Quality Project at the University of Birmingham in geography is bringing together lots of different research programs into one bigger sort of mega analysis of climate risk and vulnerability. So on the left here, we've got some previous research that's looked at urban heat island intensity. So the built environment in the core city centre tends to be a little bit warmer than the surrounding areas. Excuse me. And then you've got in the middle here is some work that was conducted by Birmingham City Council recently. I think Simon had also mentioned about environmental justice mapping. So the inequalities of access to green space around the city is very important things to factor in. And my colleague who has just walked in, hi, has also done some research on heat vulnerability across Birmingham. And you can see that these maps kind of show a very similar trend where there are certain areas that are more at risk and more vulnerable to the effects of climate hazards such as heat and access to green space. So we need to look at how we can bring this all together to look at one sort of holistic map and analysis that encompasses all of this, that will support Birmingham City Council to make their decisions. So that brings me on to the next topic, which is the aims and objectives of what we call the CRVA, which is our climate risk and vulnerability assessment. We started this working just in Birmingham. So our sort of mantra and what we're really focused on is making sure that the methodology that we've devised for mapping climate risk and vulnerability is transparent. We've used as much open data as possible to make sure that other local authorities could replicate this work and try and meet the same goals. We've co-designed the work in partnership with Birmingham City Council directly and have been working really closely with the geospatial lead there and also some of the policy planners. Some of this work was submitted as part of a carbon disclosure project, which is a non-profit company that deals with taking all the submissions of other cities around the world on their actions for climate. They're addressing their climate risk and vulnerability and what they're doing to take climate action. This CRVA submission helped them increase their grade from a B to an A grade. So I think it was a really beneficial piece of work that we helped deliver. We focused it as an MVP, a minimum viable product. So we're just doing the most with the least that we can to start with, and then adaptation as an iterative cycle of improvement. We start with something, and then we build as we have more information and more knowledge and more capacity and ability. We've also taken a very different approach from an academic stance. What is highlighted in red here is that we've taken a decision-first approach as opposed to a science-first approach when we've been devising the CRVA, and that is because we've started with what is the problem we want to address, which is about climate risk and vulnerability. So we really focused on the problem and then worked the science around the needs of the local authority. And then and that helps them from a capacity building point of view, that we are going to disseminate the methodology and hand over the process to Birmingham City Council so their geospatial analysts are able to take this going forwards. When new data is updated, which is open, they can extract that, add it into the CRVA, and they can start monitoring progress. So I'm really excited to show that this is a graphic that we have just had released as of yesterday. So you are the first people to see some of the work that we've been able to show in this presentation. So this is just an example of this is a visualization of what we see it's representing. So you've got your lowest risk areas, which would be in blue, and your highest risk areas leading up to yellow. So this is sort of a snapshot of an area of what it might look like. So you've got your areas where the combination of different climate hazards might come together and increase the overall climate risk. And what is the spatial disparity in that climate risk? That's what we're trying to understand. And that will help us highlight what areas are most at risk so we can target them a little bit more with interventions for climate change adaptation, which would also include nature-based solutions, which is the point of being here, helping with nature-based solutions and greening and infrastructure and trees. So we've called our climate risk and vulnerability assessment a burger recipe to start with Birmingham. So there are 11 layers, which are our burger fillings. We have done some geospatial processing of all the different layers, which include air quality, green space cover, tree canopy cover, flood risk, surface temperature, building height and form, and then some socioeconomic variables such as the indices of multiple deprivation and excess years life lost. We've then put them through a geospatial transformation in GIS, converted all of these layers into standardized relative scores for the boundary of Birmingham. Then when you sum them all together, you have a final score where the highest possible score, each layer being a score of 0 to 1, the total layer highest score could be up to a score of 11. So that would be the higher the score, the higher the risk of the vulnerability to climate change of that particular area. Now this is gridded at 100-meter resolution. If you're interested, we have published the first iteration of this we call our burger recipe. So you can have a look. We've provided some geospatial instructions on how you can access the data that we've got available, how you can transform it, and then how you can try and do this for another area. So I think this is a really important part of what we're trying to deliver from a transparency point of view. Here are some results that we've delivered for Birmingham. So as you can see, this first graph on the first map on the left is the scores at 100-meter resolution, where you've got the yellow is your highest relative risk for the whole of the city, and then in blue is the lowest risk for the city. And then using those grid squares, we can then aggregate it to different neighbourhood levels. So we've got lower super output area in the middle, and then at ward level on the right-hand side. These ward and LSOA boundaries are really important because they influence decision-making for Birmingham City Council. So it very quickly helps them hone in on an area, look at it a little bit in a bit more depth to understand what can be done to help address the overall climate risk and vulnerability of that area. We presented some of this work as part of our West Midlands air quality meetings, and the West Midlands Combined Authority then approached us and said, would you be able to help us try and expand this a little bit further and take it to the whole of the West Midlands? So we said, yeah, of course. So West Midlands Combined Authority is the strategic authority that has the money and the power to make decisions for the region. That includes Birmingham, which is probably quite helpful because Birmingham has a bit of a financial issue right now. So West Midlands Combined Authority is going to help support the local authorities with this work. And this is because the adaptation plan for the West Midlands Combined Authority was released recently, and the profile of adaptation is beginning to increase across the Combined Authority. So it's a really good call to action to be able to get involved in this work with them. So they had a few requests of us to expand this map. One was, can we improve the data that's on vulnerability for the map? So that was one thing I went away and had a look at. The second was that West Midlands Combined Authority have a great level of engagement with citizens. They have a citizens panel where people come together and they present some ideas and some thoughts to citizens, and then they get some feedback. So this work was involved in citizen panel engagement to inform them about climate change, to gauge the level of understanding of climate change and climate risk, but also to get feedback on the work that we produce and how we can make it better for them. And then as part of that, it was to review the methodology itself. What can we do to improve it slightly with this increased amount of data that we're pulling together? So I won't go through this in a great amount of detail, but this is one of our second snazzy graphics that we've just had published by our graphic designer. So at the moment, we're in between level points 2 and 3. So we've collected lots of different data. We've, instead of just doing a burger recipe of 13 layers, of 11 data sets, we've pulled together 24. And a lot of those 14 data sets that really look at community vulnerability of the area. As Simon had mentioned in his presentation a little bit earlier, that the area of the West Midlands and parts of Birmingham can be quite deprived, so it's really important we understand what are the drivers of the vulnerability so we can pull it together and start targeting places. So we collected data from, particularly from the 2021 census that was really useful and really insightful, and was also of a higher resolution than the indices of multiple deprivation. So it enabled us to have a slightly better sort of level of spatial analysis that we could undertake. We used the same hazard data sets that we'd used for Birmingham, and we also then looked at census data to look at the population density of areas, because it's something we hadn't previously looked at. Instead of summing all the layers up, we separated them into hazards, vulnerability, and exposure, created layers for each of those in a burger recipe style, and then multiplied them together to get a combined final layer. So at the moment, we're just finalizing that. That will be then handed over to the West Midlands Combined Authority, who will publish it. And then this work will help them, as in point 4, with adaptation and engagement for the region. And then, as I had previously mentioned, as new data is available, they have the capacity and the ability, because we will hand over the process to them, to be able to update it. So this is what it looks like at the moment. Might be subject to a little bit of change, but you can see that there's 2 important points to make. First is that the higher risk areas and the lower risk areas, particularly for Birmingham, have changed a little bit, and that is a function of the additional data that we've used. And another important point is that because we're now looking at a larger relative boundary, the distribution of scores will change slightly, but it's still nonetheless really important information. So West Midlands Combined Authority can get in touch with all the different local authorities to help them with their development planning for and adapting to climate change. And there are lots of different ways we're looking specifically, so this is graphic number 3, very snazzy graphic, the specific things that this mapping is helping them do. So to start, we'll go clockwise, to monitor and evaluate adaptation progress. So as new data comes in, we can update the maps. Are we starting to see the scores move away from yellow and start becoming more blue? That's a good thing. The next, I think, very important one is to review development proposals. Now, this is probably where green infrastructure and nature-based solutions comes in. When there's lots of new redevelopment coming in, proposals coming in, we can use the map to help scrutinize those plans and say, are they going to address climate risk and climate problems? Can we look at how we can reduce flood risk with nature-based solutions? Can we plant more trees? Are there lots of different things we can look at to help solve these issues? And it will help allocate funding and resources because we can prioritize actions. We can support inclusive growth because we're addressing the inequity of green space and areas that are at risk to climate change, to influence local and regional policy, as I mentioned, to prioritize adaptation actions. But also, I think this is a really good communication tool. A map is really easy for people to understand, especially for the public. So something that will be a really good starting point to talk and learn about climate change. And they can start asking questions about their neighborhood, their community. Why does this matter? How is it going to affect me? So what's coming next? Last few slides. How might this map help the West Midlands a bit further is publishing this information. Climate adaptation information on their dashboard is coming soon. This is a public dashboard which is available on their website. This information will be uploaded and published on this section of the dashboard. So watch this space. It should be out soon. And if you want to see something that has been done already, we've got the Birmingham City Council have published their map, and you can scan it on their website here, and you can have a look at it and have a little play around and see what we've done. So thank you very much for your time. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.